The very day Tyler Bennett returned from the countryside, the Bennett family arrived at the welcome banquet with betrothal gifts in tow. Everyone assumed the two families would be discussing our engagement, but instead, I pulled my father out of the banquet hall. In my previous life, Tyler and I had indeed gone through with the marriage. Afterward, I settled into the role of a housewife. When I accidentally lost my first pregnancy and failed to conceive again, Tyler never voiced a complaint. On the contrary, as if afraid I'd be too heartbroken, he even took the initiative to adopt a child. Seeing how good our marriage seemed, my father entrusted the factory he had built up with a lifetime of effort to Tyler on his deathbed, hoping only that he would treat me well. But the very next day, at my father's funeral, I overheard Tyler speaking with his assistant. "President Bennett, you ordered someone to poison your father-in-law's food. Now that he's dead, should we continue giving your wife the medicine that prevents her from conceiving?" "Of course. As long as Chloe Hall can't bear children, I'll have every reason to bring Sophia Young's child into our household." It was only then that I realized the truth: Tyler had never loved me. His tenderness had always been a performance, crafted to clear the way for his first love and her child. Shattered and heartbroken, I drove us into the river after the funeral. But when I opened my eyes again, I was back in the days before our engagement. This time, I went straight to the son of a state-run factory director. "You once said you'd protect me. Does that still count?" Chloe Hall. Tyler Bennett came back early from the countryside. "Hurry, get ready, we need to attend the welcome banquet," my father's familiar voice rang out, and I suddenly realized this wasn't just a dream. I had been reborn, returned to the very day of Tyler Bennett's homecoming. In my previous life, the Bennett family hadn't known that Tyler wanted to break off the engagement, and they had delivered the betrothal gifts directly to the welcome banquet. That very night, I gathered my courage and snuck into his room. Since we already had a marriage contract, and for the sake of my reputation, Tyler quickly went along with the wedding. After that, I gave up my own factory business to focus solely on being his dutiful wife. Though our first child was lost in a fall down the stairs, Tyler seemed to treat me better and better afterward. He brewed my medicine every day with his own hands and even suggested adopting a child so I wouldn't feel lonely. But at my father's funeral, I overheard the truth once more. "President Bennett, why poison your father-in-law when his health was already failing?" He discovered the truth about Chloe Hall's infertility. I couldn't let him live. "And what about the medicine? Should we keep giving it to her?" "Of course. Only if Chloe Hall remains barren will she accept Sophia Young's child as her own. And if she finds out the truth? What does it matter? She married me for my name and status. As long as she remains my wife, she won't dare make a scene." So that fall down the stairs, it wasn't an accident, but a push. The daily medicine he brewed with such care was a poison meant to rob me of children forever. And my father's death, his doing as well. All of it, every last thing, was for the sake of Sophia Young's child. I rose quickly, putting on a pink ruffled dress I had never worn in my last life, curling my hair carefully. When Tyler saw me, his eyes lit up for a moment before he looked away. Catching my gaze, he smirked and strode toward me. "Chloe Hall, I'll admit you look good dressed like this. But tell me, what scheme are you plotting now to force me into marriage?" It seemed fate had favored not just me. Tyler Bennett had been reborn too. I gave him a polite smile. "Whatever are you talking about? I never intended to marry you." His face darkened instantly, changing color again and again. "I know this is just your little ploy, hard to get, trying to make me chase you. But I only like women who are gentle and elegant, like Sophia Young. Don't waste your efforts on me. Even if you accept the betrothal gifts today, I will never love you." With that, he pulled the woman at his side closer. I understood perfectly. Who you like is none of my concern. I've always thought childhood betrothals were outdated nonsense anyway. These days, people believe in freedom of choice. Then I turned away, walking into the banquet hall without sparing him another glance. That wasn't my first time meeting Sophia Young. I had seen her in my past life as well. But back then, Tyler told me she was his brother's widow, the woman who had saved his life in the countryside, sacrificing her own. He said he was only taking care of her out of loyalty. But his so-called care had been in her bed. And me? I had been too blind to trusting. I let out a bitter laugh at the memory. For reasons I couldn't fathom, Tyler seemed to lose his composure at my indifference. Dragging Sophia along, he strode into the hall, grabbed the microphone and declared, "All my life I followed my parents' arrangements, lived step by step as they directed. But during my time in the countryside, I met the love of my life. In this lifetime I, Tyler Bennett, will marry no one but Sophia Young. As for my previous engagement to Chloe Hall, I hereby declare it null and void. The Bennett family's business had always depended on my family's support." With Tyler so eager to sever ties, the banquet descended into chaos. Why is Tyler Bennett suddenly breaking off his engagement to Miss Hall? Weren't they childhood sweethearts? Looks like he never cared for her at all. He's traded her in for some scheming woman who's nothing like Miss Hall. And who exactly is this Sophia Young, that the Bennett family would dare slap the Hall family in the face like this? The crowd was buzzing with gossip, and I almost snapped back at Tyler Bennett to save face for my father, but before I could, I saw his father clutch his chest, muttering such wickedness, and collapse to the ground. Although I had been ruthless toward Tyler, his uncle and aunt had always treated me like their own daughter. I didn't want things to get messy and cause trouble for them. So I stepped forward and took the microphone, completely calm. "Honored guests, the decision to annul the engagement was a mutual one between our families. There is no question of anyone abandoning anyone else. Today, we use this welcome banquet as a witness. From this moment on, Tyler Bennett and the Hall family have no connection whatsoever." With that, I didn't hesitate and pulled my father away from the scene. I slid into the driver's seat with practiced ease, but when my father tapped my head with his cane, signaling me to get out, I realized I still couldn't drive. In the past, my family had shielded me from everything. But to serve as Tyler Bennett's dutiful wife, and to gather intelligence from the wives of businessmen, I had forced myself to learn many skills I would otherwise never have needed. At home, seeing my father sitting on the sofa with a furrowed brow, my heart ached. In my previous life, my obsession with Tyler had led to his death. This time I vowed to protect him and everything he had worked for, and I would never let Tyler hurt my family again. "Dad," I approached and sat beside him, collapsing into his arms, tears streaming down my face. "My darling, it's all right. That brat Tyler Bennett lost his mind. If you really liked him, I'd put my pride aside and let him marry you. As for Sophia Young, one word from me, and the Bennett family would never let her through the door. No, Dad. I don't like Tyler Bennett. That childhood betrothal was meaningless. Don't worry. In my previous life, I had married Tyler Bennett, and Dad had helped the Bennett family countless times. He even gave Tyler the leather factory he had spent decades building, believing him to be a good son-in-law. Back then, businessmen were considered low status. Marrying a man with an education could elevate the Hall family business and secure the factory's future. Tyler thought I had married him for his social status, but that wasn't it. Dad's health had been poor for years, and as the only daughter, relatives often pressured him to hand over the business, claiming a girl couldn't run a factory. I had to find him a trustworthy son-in-law to give him peace of mind. If I never married, I wouldn't be able to protect his lifetime of work on my own. Thinking this through, I started considering who could help me manage the factory. Of course, how could I forget him? Samuel Reed, the son of the state-run factory director. When we were children, he would pull my braids, and I would chase him around the yard. During the layoffs, our factory had taken in their unemployed workers. The workers didn't riot, and in doing so, we had helped his family immensely. From that day on, Samuel Reed had always gone out of his way to help me. Even though he didn't know English, when he learned that I was going abroad, he hired a tutor and studied for a year just to keep up with me. At my wedding, his eyes were red, and he drank heavily, gripping Tyler Bennett and warning, "If you ever mistreat Chloe Hall, I'll be the first to stop you. I'll even take her away with her household registration if I have to. Got it?" I thought it was just a kid's temper, looking for a fight. But in reality he had seen Tyler shopping with Sophia Young, didn't hesitate to beat him up, and even threatened to ruin the Bennett family if he hurt me. I had no idea what happened to him afterward, and whether he would grieve terribly upon hearing of my death. Thinking of this, I quickly prepared a meal, packed it in a lunchbox, and headed to the state-run factory. He would probably still be inspecting the site and hadn't eaten yet. Unexpectedly, I ran into Tyler Bennett, who seemed determined to put Sophia Young into the factory ahead of time. Seeing the lunchbox in my hands, he blocked my way, smirking knowingly. "Chloe Hall, I knew you wouldn't let go of me. You even tracked me here to deliver food. After publicly annulling the engagement at the banquet, are you regretting it now?" I ignored him and said coldly, "Step aside." His grip tightened on my arm. "Don't think I don't know what you're up to. You came here to deliver food, knowing I brought Sophia Young, trying to make her misunderstand, right?" I shook my head and turned to the security office, holding the lunchbox. Tyler shouted after me, "She loves braised pork. Make sure to give her extra." The security guard said Samuel Reed wasn't at the factory today, so I carried the lunchbox to his house instead. The servant informed him I had arrived, and Samuel appeared in pajamas, rubbing his sleepy eyes. He had clearly drunk a lot last night, his cheeks were still flushed. "Chloe Hall? What are you doing here? Is it that brat Tyler Bennett annulling the engagement that upset you? Don't waste your time on him. I've always said he's a scoundrel, no good at all. Haven't eaten yet, I'll take you to eat. The best restaurant, full course feast." I listened to him babble and pressed my lips together. "Will you get engaged to me?" Samuel froze, staring at me blankly as if he hadn't heard. "What, say that again?" "You said you'd protect me, right? So will you get engaged to me?" I asked quietly, tugging at the hem of my clothes. Although Samuel Reed had always treated me well, we had grown up constantly teasing and fighting each other. If he still thought of me as just a childhood friend, things could get awkward. Seeing him hesitate for a moment, I added quickly, "Your family runs a state-owned factory, and mine is private. If we join forces in the future, our development would be far stronger than going it alone." Before I could finish, he dashed toward me. "Chloe Hall, I'm willing. I don't care what your reason is, I just want to be with you. I was just thinking about what betrothal gifts to prepare. What do you have there? Food? Did you bring me 9 grams? Stop, it's cold now." I tried to snatch the lunchbox back from him. "No problem, I like cold food." Samuel Reed's father seemed very pleased with the arrangement, and immediately reached an understanding with my dad. They consulted a fortune teller to pick an auspicious date for the engagement banquet, setting it for 7 days later. As I was choosing my dowry, the commotion broke out at the counter. Tyler Bennett and Sophia Young were loudly demanding, "Return all of this immediately." I stepped forward to speak, but Tyler slapped me across the face. "Chloe Hall, how long are you going to make a scene? I've told you before I'm not marrying you. Now you're buying all this dowry, trying to force a marriage. You think Sophia Young has no one to protect her, that she can't afford these things, so you can humiliate her. Let me tell you, even if you bought out the entire department store, I still wouldn't marry you. Return everything immediately." The manager hurried over. "Mr. Bennett, please calm down." But Tyler didn't want to hear reason. "I know this affects your sales, but I won't let an outsider humiliate Sophia. If you sell these things to the Hall family today, we'll never cooperate again." Even though I had lived with him for so many years in my previous life, I had already stopped loving him, yet hearing those words still made me feel unworthy. Seeing the manager nervously wiping his brow, I took a deep breath, preparing to explain, when Samuel Reed suddenly appeared, draping his arm around my shoulders. "Tyler Bennett, don't go too far. Chloe Hall's dowry is for me." "What, are you going to stop her from marrying me?" His hand on my shoulder pressed slightly, as if to give me strength. Tyler froze, mouth agape. "What, marry you? How could she marry you?" He stared at me up and down until his eyes landed on the engagement ring on my finger, and the truth finally registered. "Chloe Hall, Are you trying to play hard to get? Don't think I don't know how hard you tried to marry me, he shouted at the crowd, suddenly deranged. Ever since you were little, you've been following me around, risking your own reputation just to marry me. How could you possibly marry Samuel Reed? Chloe erupted like a madman, yelling at everyone nearby. This must be a conspiracy between the Hall family and the Reed family. They've colluded to deceive the laid-off workers in the state-run factory. If you sell her the dowry, you are accomplices of capitalism, criminals of economic reform. I didn't understand why Tyler was so agitated. In my past life, he had done so many cruel things to me for Sophia Young. Now that I was marrying someone else, no one was interfering with his relationship. He should have been relieved. Frowning, I muttered to myself how impossible it was to predict a man's mind. Seeing his frenzy, I didn't want him to cause any harm, so I grabbed Samuel Reed's hand and pulled him along, leaving. I thought Tyler would leave us alone, but he blocked our path, staring at our intertwined hands, teeth gritted. Samuel Reed, you have no idea what Chloe Hall is like. She'll do anything to satisfy her desires. Now she's engaged to you, marrying you, but it's only because of your state-run factory's reputation. You think she really likes you? You're so naive, watch out, or she'll scam you dry. I opened my mouth to argue, but Samuel punched him squarely. Tyler Bennett, S punches for Chloe Hall. Next time I hear words like that, it won't just be a punch. Sophia Young rushed forward, worried, to support Tyler, tears welling in her eyes. Brother Tyler, don't say that. Miss Chloe and Samuel Reed clearly care for each other. Why be so aggressive? Seeing Tyler ignore her, she turned to Samuel, her eyes red and pleading. Samuel, Brother Tyler just wants to protect you. He's worried you'll be hurt. Don't take it to heart. Tyler shoved her aside and faced Samuel, roaring, What do you know? How much do you really understand Chloe Hall? You don't know that she pretended to be drunk to sleep with me to marry me. Bang. Tyler wiped blood from his nose and laughed it off. Huh. Protecting her this way, have you already won her over? That red mole on her chest, you like it too, don't you? I trembled with anger, wanting to tear his mouth apart. Before I could react, Sophia Young jumped ahead, covering Tyler's mouth, feigning shock. Brother Tyler, how could you reveal something so private about Miss Chloe? You too. This is utter nonsense. Before his words even landed, Samuel Reed kicked Tyler Bennett to the ground and began pummeling him. Tyler Bennett, are you even a man? Chloe Hall is someone I've worked tirelessly to win. She's never deceived me. If you don't cherish her, someone else will. And if I ever hear you insult her again, I won't hesitate to cut off the Bennett family supply chain. Tyler lay down, powerless to resist, muttering over and over, How could this be? Chloe Hall clearly loves me, she loves me. Samuel Reed ignored him and, taking my hand, told the manager, Pack up everything Miss Chloe has chosen. Charge it to me. But this is my dowry. It should. He interrupted, looking at me solemnly. Chloe Hall, I've chosen you. From now on, what's mine is yours. Buying things for my wife is only natural. News of the incident spread like wildfire. In that era, when entertainment options were limited, gossip became everyone's pastime. Rumors about my time studying abroad circulated, claiming I had been corrupted by foreign influences, and even inventing scandalous stories of affairs I never had. People who had never met me acted as if they knew every detail of my private life. Even comic books began to portray absurd versions of me. Worried I might be driven to despair, my father and Samuel Reed's father suggested sending us abroad to escape the scandal. I refused. In my previous life, I might have been crushed by this. But having weathered half a lifetime of storms, this seemed trivial by comparison. The engagement banquet went ahead as I had planned. Held at the highest standard, the event invited all of A City's prominent figures. Standing on stage hand in hand with Samuel Reed, I addressed the crowd confidently. Welcome, everyone, to my engagement banquet with Samuel Reed. I'm sure many of you have heard rumors about me recently. I'd like to take this opportunity to clarify, they are all baseless. Yes, the Bennett family did arrange a childhood betrothal with my family, but that was all a joke between the older generation. I never took it seriously. When Tyler Bennett returned from his time away, we made this clear. I don't know why he has chosen to lash out and ruin my reputation with false rumors. Perhaps he thought it was a clever business strategy. Laughter rippled through the crowd, and the rumors collapsed under their own absurdity. Samuel Reed took the microphone from me, his voice gentle but firm. I may not be a man of great accomplishments, but our Reed family never allows itself to be wronged. I have always quietly protected Miss Chloe. I know her character better than anyone. If she were truly as others claim, we wouldn't be standing here hosting this banquet. From now on, the Hall family and the Reed family are one. We neither start trouble, nor fear it. And to Tyler Bennett, I suggest you check your heart and avoid embarrassing yourself further. He raised his glass toward Tyler across the room and drank in one confident gesture. I watched as Tyler Bennett staggered out of the banquet, muttering to himself, unsure where he had gone. After the banquet, those who had mocked me began to ridicule Tyler Bennett instead, pointing out his hypocrisy, wanting both women, enjoying the pleasures of both worlds. He had insisted on marrying Sophia Young but refused to let me marry Samuel Reed. I ignored the gossip. After our wedding, Samuel Reed treated me as he always had, and our relationship became more natural and comfortable. Because Tyler had been so rough with me in the past, I had been hesitant about intimacy. Samuel Reed never forced me, and knowing my back had been injured during my time abroad, he had studied massage and would massage me for half an hour each night before I slept. The more care he gave me, the more uneasy I felt. The next day, during the massage, I loosened my clothing, exposing myself to him. Samuel Reed, Tyler Bennett was right. I do have a red mole on my chest, but... He immediately closed his eyes, his hands trembling as he fastened my clothes. Chloe Hall, I know who you are. I've loved you longer than you realize. You don't need to do this. I'm just waiting for the moment you truly accept me. Tears instantly filled my eyes, and I kissed him, feeling the warmth of his presence. That night, I discovered that intimacy could be this beautiful. Later, I heard that Tyler Bennett, after leaving our engagement banquet, had gone to the river. Sitting on the bank, he muttered to himself, and passers-by thought he had lost his mind. Although the Bennett family had initially refused to let Sophia Young into the house, her pregnancy could not be hidden. They had no choice but to recognize her as a daughter-in-law and arranged for her to stay in the hospital. When Sophia Young's child was born, Tyler Bennett did not visit the hospital even once. The Bennett family held a birthday banquet for the grandson. I had no intention of attending, but Samuel Reed reminded me that refusing might make us seem petty. After all, these were business circles, and decorum mattered. Reluctantly, I agreed. When I saw Tyler Bennett and Sophia Young again, they were not as affectionate as I had imagined. I had no intention of greeting them, and after presenting the customary gifts, I was about to leave. But as I passed an empty room, I overheard their conversation. Sophia Young, I treated you well because your ex-husband saved my life. Don't take advantage of that. Sophia Young let out a small chuckle. So what, now that the child's born, you think you can just abandon us? Don't forget, this child belongs to me. As for your past with Chloe Hall, I have no interest. As long as she doesn't interfere with me, I couldn't care less. Tyler Bennett's voice cracked as he replied, but you said you saw Chloe Hall hugging some older man entering a hotel. You lied to me. What? Could it be that in the previous life, he believed Sophia Young too? Theft. Sophia Young rolled her eyes. Are you kidding me? What I saw was Chloe Hall with her father. You refused to believe her and didn't ask who the older man was, and now you think she's some kind of dirty woman. And now you're blaming me. Tyler Bennett bolted through the door, and when he saw me standing there, he froze, unsure what to do, and grabbed me in a sudden embrace. You're still alive, Chloe, thank God. I pushed him away. Tyler Bennett, we both have our own families now. Please show some respect. He muttered under his breath, I'm sorry, Chloe, I'm sorry, it was my fault. I ignored him and walked quickly with Samuel Reed. That apology was one I had waited for far too long, so long that I no longer needed it. Later, Tyler Bennett sold off all his family's assets and used the money to take over a state-owned steel mill. In my previous life, Tyler Bennett and I had planned to bid for the same steel mill, but I was killed in the river before it ever came to that. Probably the moment he, like me, had also experienced a rebirth. Originally, I had considered bidding for the state-owned steel mill again, but Samuel Reed advised me against it. The equipment was old, and the waste treatment was poor, making a high bid unwise. Instead, he suggested we take over a dock and build our own steel mill. At first, nobody believed in our new venture. But Samuel Reed held my hand firmly and looked me in the eyes. "Chloe, trust me. This time, I will protect you, no matter what." I froze, my mind suddenly torn apart by memories, the fragments of the past flashing before me, of Tyler Bennett and I being pulled from the river. In that haze, I thought I saw Samuel Reed carrying my lifeless body, ascending Xianyuan Mountain with each step bowing to the heavens. I held his hand, nodding silently. "I trust you." We split off a team of employees from our factory, and brought in skilled workers from the Northeast to manage the steel mill. As Samuel Reed predicted, Tyler Bennett's steel mill ran into trouble. Due to poor wastewater treatment, it affected nearby residents who relied on the river. Production was halted, orders delayed, and the mill suffered serious losses. Meanwhile, our self-built steel mill became a key provincial project. Just as things were settling, Tyler Bennett approached me. "Chloe Hall, I'm sorry." When I didn't respond, he looked up at me and asked, "Have you also been reborn?" He pulled me down to sit beside him. "I don't know if it's a dream or reality, but every night I dream of our life together." He smiled bitterly. "In those dreams, I treated you badly, hurt you deeply. I remember the child, I remember killing it with my own hands." And Chloe Hall's father, his eyes reddened. "Chloe Hall, I'm even glad it was only a dream." I glared at him. "Bennett, what if it wasn't a dream? Maybe heaven gave me this second chance to live, to finally leave you behind forever." His eyes widened. After a long pause, he sighed. "Chloe Hall, I was ridiculously wrong. I always thought I loved Sophia Young, but now I see clearly she was only the widow of someone who saved my life. Her child isn't even mine." In truth, even in the past life, he had known I had genuinely loved him, but he refused to admit it. "Chloe Hall, I'm a monster. You must hate me. Seeing my steel mill fail now must bring you joy, right?" I had no words. Reborn, my feelings for him were no longer pure hate or love. In the past, marrying him had been my sacrifice, a transaction of my own virtue. I loved him fiercely, but now, having a second chance, all those past grievances could remain in the past. Heaven had pitied me, giving me a new life. I only wanted to live it well. "Tyler Bennett, perhaps all the past was just a dream. We should move forward. I am happy now, and I hope you are too. Let's not meet again. I don't want my husband to be unhappy." I turned to leave, but Tyler Bennett grabbed my arm and dropped to his knees. "Chloe Hall, I truly know I was wrong. I know you don't really love Samuel Reed. You agreed to meet me, now you still love me, don't you?" I shivered in fear, pulling my arm away and stammering, Tyler Bennett, are you crazy?" Seeing me flustered, Tyler Bennett seemed almost satisfied. "Chloe Hall, I knew you still love me. Otherwise, why would you be so shy and stammer like this?" "I don't care that you've been married before," he continued, "as long as you can bear my child, I will treat you as if you've never loved another man." "Tyler Bennett, do you have to bring up my child when you talk like that?" "What? You and Samuel Reed have a child?" His shock was obvious. After a moment, he laughed bitterly. "Chloe Hall, don't lie to me. I've heard that you and Samuel Reed haven't consummated your marriage. You marrying him, I can understand, it's just to make things awkward for me. But I know you still love me. Now, I'm telling you, I never loved Sophia Young, and I've already sent her away. Happy now? You should divorce Samuel Reed immediately," and I laughed as if nothing ever happened. "I'll even help you manage your steel mill, no losses for you, I promise." I thought he had genuinely repented, but now I realized I'd been giving him too much credit. He was just scheming to take my steel mill. I scoffed and called Samuel Reed over. Tyler Bennett, do you even have the nerve to say that? Today, we were supposed to go for a prenatal checkup, but you insisted on discussing business first, so I came to see you. Do you know why he's willing to let me talk to you a little longer? I know, Samuel Reed replied, because he's sensible. He knows you don't love him, so he's planning to step aside on his own. I gripped Samuel Reed's hand tightly, speaking each word deliberately. You're wrong. It's because I told him that to me. He's like a rabid dog. If you don't put him down, he'll keep trying to bite people. Having said that, I hurriedly left with Samuel Reed, leaving Tyler Bennett fuming impotently in the room. Life went on swiftly. Samuel Reed and I had a lovely daughter. At her 100-day celebration, Tyler Bennett, for appearances, showed up with Sophia Young. Unexpectedly, Sophia Young's supposedly dead husband also appeared. Tyler Bennett had kept Sophia Young confined at home all this time, so her husband had never had the chance to see her. Tyler, Sophia Young's child is mine. You're bankrupt now. You can't give them a good life. Give her back to me. Tyler Bennett turned pale with fury, nearly fainting. Only then did he realize he'd been duped. Sophia Young had known he was a wealthy city heir and wanted a secure life for her child. She staged the fake death, having her husband rescue Tyler Bennett, then brought her husband back after Tyler Bennett went bankrupt to leave the Bennett family and find a new benefactor. They left in a heated argument. I never found out how that farce ended. I only knew I never saw Sophia Young again. Later, Tyler Bennett adapted to the times, running small businesses just enough to sustain himself. When our daughter was 8, I went to pick her up from school. Tyler Bennett, whom I hadn't seen in years, blocked my way. I eyed him warily. Tyler Bennett, what do you want? I warn you, Samuel Reed will be here any minute to pick me up. Tyler Bennett smiled bitterly and knelt before me. Chloe Hall, I've been looking for you. I was a complete jerk before. Give me another chance. I won't ever lose you again. I'm running a small stall now. I can take care of myself. I glanced at him and turned to leave, but he stopped me. I know, he continued, you still have feelings for me. Otherwise, why did you faint at the school gate when you heard my news? I sneered. Tyler Bennett, how can you be so sure? Maybe I fainted because I'm pregnant again. I touched my belly as I spoke. Tyler Bennett ground his teeth. Chloe Hall, I'll give you one last chance. Come back to me, and I'll assume everything you did before was forced by Samuel Reed. I can even support the child. I laughed bitterly. Tyler Bennett, you've had so many affairs that you've forgotten yourself. Samuel Reed and I are perfectly legitimate. What right do you have to stop us? He grabbed my clothes, trembling. Chloe Hall, you loved me so much in the past. You were the Hall family's daughter, and you even lost your own name for me. Now, I finally examine my heart. Heaven gave me a second chance to make up for the mistakes of my past life. I understand who I truly love. I'll make amends for all the harm I caused. Tyler Bennett, heaven has given us a second chance to see our hearts clearly. I've realized who I truly love. Samuel Reed. Chloe Hall, I was wrong. I understand if you can't forgive me right away. But what about the child we never had in our past life? Don't you want them to live this life? The mention of the child made me even angrier. Child? You still have the audacity to bring up our past child? You killed that child with your own hands. What right do you have to say such things, murderer? Seeing my resolve, he steadied himself. You endured childbirth for Samuel Reed, but what about him? He didn't let you rest at home, he even made you continue working. Didn't I protect you in the past, not letting you go anywhere? I took a deep breath. Don't try to twist things. I worked because I chose to, and Samuel Reed fully supported my decision. With him, I learned that a woman can keep her career after marriage. I can have my own name, pursue my own goals. As for you, perhaps our first life was wrong from the beginning. That's why heaven gave me this chance to correct it. I turned to see Samuel Reed holding our daughter. Smiling, I walked over to them. At home, after much prodding, he told me a dream. In my dream, everything I experienced mirrored what happened in my past life. He held me gently, his voice trembling. Chloe, in the dream, I was in so much pain. I said softly, that if in the dream you married Tyler Bennett, I would protect you. I wouldn't let him hurt you. Compared to having you, I fear losing you forever even more. I nodded and kissed his cheek. Thankfully, it was only a dream. We didn't miss our chance. Over time, my father's health gradually worsened. Just when we felt helpless, the hospital informed us that someone was willing to donate a kidney. It wasn't until the surgery was over that I found out who it was: Tyler Bennett. I brought a gift, wanting to thank him, but couldn't find him. All I saw was a letter. In it, he said he had accepted the reality that I would not return to him, but he wanted to make amends for the harm he caused my father in our past life. It was fair enough. From that moment on, we were even: no debts, no obligations, and no need to meet again. In my past life, I ignored my family's objections and married a poor man. For 5 years, we scrimped and saved. When the shampoo at home ran out, he told me to just add some water and shake the bottle. It would last a few more washes, every little saving counted. When the toothpaste was finished, he insisted there was always a bit left if we squeezed hard enough. To help him pay off his debts, I worked myself to the bone, working full-time during the day and taking on part-time jobs at night. Until one day, I accidentally discovered that on his first love's birthday, he had spent over $1 million just to throw her a one-of-a-kind birthday party. That was when I realized he wasn't poor at all. He was actually Jason Miller, the only heir to the Miller Group, sitting on a fortune worth tens of millions. The shock, combined with years of exhaustion, sent me collapsing on my way home from work. And just like that, I died. When I opened my eyes again, I was back on the very day I found out about his affair. At 9 o'clock that evening, I was still working my night shift at a milk tea shop when a push notification popped up on my phone. Top star Hannah Moore's mystery boyfriend throws a lavish birthday bash, rumored to have spent over $1 million just to make her smile. The video showed flowers carpeting the ground, fireworks lighting up the night sky. It was breathtaking. The man beside Hannah Moore looked oddly familiar. I took a screenshot and zoomed in. Even though only his back was visible, after 5 years of marriage, I recognized him instantly. It was my husband, Jason Miller. How? Because tied around his wrist was the colorful braided cord I had personally put on him that very morning. It's a tradition in my hometown during the Dragon Boat Festival. To keep it from falling off, I had tied the knot tight. It could only be removed by cutting it. He must have left it on to avoid my questions, risking being found out. In the video, the two of them held hands, gazing at the fireworks together. When the fireworks reached their peak, Hannah Moore tiptoed up and kissed Jason on the cheek. If he weren't my husband, I would have thought it was a beautiful, romantic scene. My line of text scrolled across the screen. Word is, Hannah Moore's boyfriend spent $1 million on this birthday celebration. $1 million. To me, that number was like something out of reach, completely unimaginable. But Jason Miller, my Jason, was just a penniless man. Where would he possibly get $1 million? Just days ago, when our shampoo ran low, he told me to add water and shake it. When the toothpaste ran out, he said to squeeze harder, there would still be some left. And I believed him. I thought he was right. After all, we were poor. Then another line of text appeared. Do you know who he is? That's Jason Miller, the sole heir of the Miller Group with tens of millions. $1 million to him is nothing. What? I froze, unable to believe what I was seeing. Shaking, I exited the video and searched his name. Countless results popped up, but at the very top was, Jason Miller, heir to the Miller Group. Beside the biography was his photo, his handsome, familiar face staring right back at me. He lied to me. All these years, he lied. He didn't even bother to change his name. I was the fool who only realized it now. Staring at the glowing screen, I didn't know if I was trembling from shock or rage. I could hardly breathe. I met Jason Miller at a matchmaking event. After just over 2 months of dating, he proposed with a paper-folded heart as a ring. I must have been out of my mind, thinking it was so romantic, so original. Without hesitation, I said yes. I turned against my family for him, cutting all ties. On the day we registered our marriage, he suddenly backed out. Under my relentless questioning, he finally admitted he had once gone into business with a friend, only to be betrayed and left with a debt of over $1.5 million. If he married me, he said, not only would he fail to give me a good life, he'd only drag me down. Instead of running, I was moved. More than ever, I was determined to marry him. Jason claimed he was an orphan, alone since childhood, suffering one hardship after another. He said I had given him the home he never had. After the wedding, we lived in the small apartment I rented. I paid the rent, the daily expenses, while all his money went to paying off debt. To speed things up, I worked day and night, until my 20s looked more like I was pushing 40. Just last night, after we were intimate, he held me close and whispered, "Wife, thank you for giving me a home. Without you, I'd still be wandering, with nowhere to belong. I'm so happy now." I nestled against him, heart overflowing. "Me too, husband." He sighed deeply. "If only I didn't have debt, you wouldn't have to work so hard." "I'm sorry, wife." I kissed his cheek and reassured him, "It's okay. As long as we work hard together, life will get better." At the time, I thought I was the luckiest woman alive, blessed with such a good man, handsome, devoted, and entirely mine. I dreamed of the day we'd clear his debt, save up for a home, and have children, a happy family of 4. But I never imagined. The memory stung, and my eyes burned with unshed tears. Just then, a message popped up from Jason. "Wife, I'll be working late tonight. Don't wait up, sleep early. Love you, your husband." He worked as a front desk clerk at a hotel. If I hadn't seen the video, I'd still be foolishly believing him, worrying that he was overworking himself again. I still don't understand, why did he lie to me? I dragged myself through the day until the end of my shift, so exhausted that I didn't even ride my bike home. As I walked, my mind replayed every moment with Jason Miller, from the day we met, to our wedding, to all the memories we'd shared over the years. Each recollection was like a knife to my heart. Tears streamed down my face as I walked. When I reached the last traffic light before my apartment complex, the sharp, stabbing pain gripped my chest. The world blurred, and then everything went black. The wailing of a siren woke me. Groggily, I heard someone whispering in my ear, "The patient has a history of heart disease." Combined with long-term overaggression, this triggered an acute myocardial infarction. I tried to focus on the people around me, but my eyes refused to open. I was too tired. A steady beeping filled the air, and then a panicked voice said, "Naughty patient's blood pressure is dropping, there's no heartbeat." A suffocating panic hit me, and I suddenly jolted awake, gasping for air. I was in the familiar milk tea shop. My colleague, Lily Brown, looked at me with concern. "Grace, are you okay? You're sweating all over." I reached up to touch my forehead. She was right. Sweat drenched me. Wiping my face, I murmured, "Yeah, I feel a bit off. A little tightness in my chest." Lily handed me a cup of water. "It's quiet here now. Go rest in the back for a bit. I'll call you when more people arrive." I took a sip, nodded, and said, "Okay, I'll lie down for a while. Call me if anyone comes." I needed time to process everything. Was this a dream? The memories were too vivid. In the break room, I retraced the events in my mind from beginning to end. I was certain now it wasn't a dream. It had all truly happened. I had been reborn. Back to the very day I discovered my husband's affair. At exactly 11:15, the notification came through. Ding. I opened the link. The video showed them together, just like in my previous life. But having already died once, I wasn't as shocked or heartbroken this time. I felt calm. I stepped out and asked Lily Brown, "If your future husband lied to you and cheated on you, what would you do?" Lily, a few years younger than me and a true Gen Z, clenched her milk teacup and said indignantly, "Let him walk away empty-handed, ruined and disgraced." The other woman, "As far away from him as possible." I nodded. Yes, that's the kind of logic a normal person would have. Dying over a scumbag who deceived me was not worth it. Making Jason Miller lose everything? Probably impossible, given his status. But ruining him and Hannah Moore publicly, that was doable. especially Hannah Moore. She was a public figure. If her involvement in a married man's life were exposed, it could destroy her career. With that thought, I recorded the video and uploaded it to the cloud. Just then, Jason Miller's text arrived. Wife, I'll be working late tonight. Don't wait up, sleep early. Love, your husband. The exact same text as last life. I screenshot it and uploaded it to the cloud, just in case. Fate had given me a second chance, and this time, I would make him pay. After my shift, I hailed a taxi home, the first time since marrying Jason Miller. Before, I had always taken the bus, walked, or occasionally used a shared bike. I had escrowed every penny, giving him all my savings to repay a debt that didn't even exist. I sat on the sofa, staring at the home we had shared for 5 years, sleepless and furious. Jason Miller, meanwhile, had not returned. He was probably wrapped up in the arms of a celebrity. The next morning, I asked my boss for leave, claiming all the vacation days I hadn't taken in 5 years. My boss was surprised. After all, I was known in the company as a workaholic, someone who hadn't taken a single day off in 5 years. Dirty work, exhausting tasks I had always volunteered, as long as there was money to be earned. I simply explained that I felt suddenly drained and needed to get out for a bit. My boss understood, approving the leave without fuss and only reminding me to rest. I quickly washed up, skipping breakfast entirely, and stepped out. Right at the entrance of my complex, I saw a familiar figure across the street. Jason Miller. I quickly ducked behind a bush. He was carrying a bag and stepping out of a Rolls-Royce, not in the high-end suit from the video, but in the same casual t-shirt and jeans he'd worn yesterday morning. I had seen this car many times before, parked outside my building. Once, when I went on a walk with Jason, I teased him, how can someone afford such a car but not a garage? He only smiled, saying nothing. Now I realized it wasn't that he couldn't afford it. He simply didn't care. Luxury cars were probably nothing to him. As he got closer, I saw the bag he carried filled with Shunjian buns, my favorite from Goji Shunjian. When he got home, he called me. When I saw "Dear Husband" on my phone screen, I just wanted to pry open his brain and see what kind of twisted thoughts have led him to write such a disgusting note. I picked up the call. Jason Miller's voice came through, casual, warm. Wife, I'm home from work. I brought your favorite Goji Shunjian buns. Where are you? I took a deep breath, forcing my voice to sound normal. I had to leave work early today. You go ahead and eat. All right. His voice carried a hint of disappointment. Then I'll make you something nice when you get home tonight. I hummed in acknowledgement, hung up, and immediately changed his contact name to Scumbag. Across from my apartment was a CAF. I picked a corner by the window where I could see everything outside without being noticed. I wanted to see exactly what Jason Miller did every day. While he stepped out, I ordered a set of mini surveillance cameras online. I was going to install them at home to see if he had ever brought Hannah Moore into our apartment while I was at work. My one-bedroom apartment, it would be nauseating to imagine her there. It wasn't until the afternoon that Jason finally left, heading straight to the Rolls-Royce parked by the curb. I pulled on a mask and hat, hailed a taxi, and followed him. We arrived at a high-end hotel. My heart skipped a beat. Could he be booking a room here? The car stopped, and the valet rushed over, opening the door and gesturing for him to enter. Jason tossed the keys to the valet. I cautiously trailed him, watching him step into a private room. As the server went in to deliver menus, I peeked inside. Several men and women around his age sat at the table, all impeccably dressed, clearly wealthy. To avoid the server's attention, I pretended to make a phone call, then slipped into a vacant room across the hall. I cracked the door open and crouched behind it, listening. They ordered an extravagant spread: steak, red wine, king crab, lobster, foie gras, salmon, dishes I could look at but never afford. A meal like that easily ran into 5 figures. Meanwhile, at home, Jason couldn't even bear to throw away leftover food, insisting we save it for the next meal. Soon, laughter erupted from the private room. Jason Miller, every time I see you in those ragged clothes, I can't help laughing. You're the heir to billions, wearing this fabric, aren't you embarrassed? When are you going to leave her? Don't tell me you've gotten soft for Grace Miller, that ugly woman? I heard Jason retort, impossible. I'm just playing for fun. There's no way she could ever make my heart beat faster. She's just too stupid. I told her I owed $1.5 million, and she helped me pay it off without question. I said we had no money, don't buy any more cosmetics or clothes, and she hasn't bought a thing in 5 years. I've never met a dumber, more love-struck woman. I should have asked for more from her. The room erupted with laughter, mocking me for my foolishness. I had thought I had found true love. But I was just a toy he played with for a moment of whim. All that talk of being an orphan, all that debt, it was just a lie to win my sympathy. The happy life I thought we had, completely fabricated. My heart felt tripped open, exposed for all to see, yet no one cared about the blood and pain. He was a richer, the wealthiest man in Lynn City, and I was the dumbest, most naive woman in all of Lynn City. I pushed aside the sorrow and quickly pulled out the recorder I had prepared, aiming it at the private room's door. Then I heard more inside. By the way, I heard Hannah Moore was with you last night. Is this an old flame rekindling? Jason answered, we hadn't seen each other in years. Just catching up. I heard he was heartbroken knowing you married someone else. Serves her right, she dumped Jason for fame back then. You all don't get it. Jason married that ugly woman just to get back at Hannah Moore. My body shook, almost losing balance. So that was this real reason for marrying me. I later checked online and confirmed, Hannah Moore was Jason's first love. Her company had forced her to maintain a pure, untouchable image, forbidding her from dating. To rise in her career, she dumped Jason. Feeling used and betrayed, Jason decided all women were fake. He played with their hearts for fun, dating woman after woman, until he chose one to marry solely to get revenge on Hannah. But he worried she might be after his wealth. That's why he hid his identity and found me. And I was the fool he manipulated every step of the way. It wasn't me who wronged him, it was Hannah Moore. Yet he treated me like a pawn, trampling on my feelings and my dignity. A surge of anger welled up inside me. I turned to leave, but then I heard someone ask Jason inside. Jason, what if that woman finds out who you are and refuses to divorce? He scoffed, voice dripping with contempt. She's too busy earning money to support me, paying off my debts. She doesn't have time to care about anything else. It doesn't matter if she finds out who I am. I have ways to make her agree to a divorce and she won't get a single cent. Hearing that out loud, I could hardly believe it. How could someone be so utterly ungrateful, so callous? My fists clenched in anger. As I stepped outside, a woman, dressed to the nines, approached. It was Hannah Moore. No sooner had she entered than everyone began complimenting her on how much more beautiful she'd become. A server came by with dishes, opening the private room door for a moment, and I caught a glimpse. Hannah Moore was seated next to Jason Miller. They looked at each other with such longing that it was almost tangible. Hannah gazed at him, her eyes burning with intensity. I love the gift. Thank you, Jason. Jason smiled faintly. I'm glad you like it. For his first love, he could lavishly spend over $1 million just to make her smile. Yet at home, he wouldn't even buy a bottle of shampoo for me when ours ran out. I didn't listen to the rest. I didn't want him to notice me. Walking down the street, tears streamed freely. For 5 years, I had poured my heart into loving Jason Miller. Afraid he was overworked at the office, I made nourishing soups for him. I skipped ordering lunch at work, eating just steamed buns and pickles, saving every penny to help him pay off his debts. And this is how he treated me? Laughable, utterly laughable. I wandered the streets all day, only returning home after dark. Jason Miller was in the kitchen cooking. Hearing the sound, he called out, "Wife, you're back. Just a moment, dinner's almost ready." He wore the Doraemon apron I had bought him, maneuvering in the tiny kitchen. Hard to believe this was the heir to millions. While cooking, he said, "Wife, I made your favorite spicy chicken. I told the butcher to pick the biggest one, and he even threw in some green onions for me. And today, I sold all the cardboard and water bottles we'd saved for half a month. Got nearly 100 yuan. After buying groceries, there's about 30 left. I put it in the drawer by the door. He really went to great lengths to put on a performance in front of me. Looking at the 4 dishes and soup on the table, I could almost imagine myself and my old wife rushing over, hugging him, praising him as the best husband in the world. But now all I felt was irony. I remembered what I overheard at lunch in that private room. Jason had claimed he learned to cook for Hannah Moore. Yet he told me it was for me. He carried the dishes out, saw my tear-streaked eyes, and hurried over. Wife, why are you crying? Did someone at work upset you? When I stayed silent, he frowned. Talk to me. Who bullied you? I'll settle it. His concerned gaze made it seem like he truly loved me. I feigned hesitation, then offered a prepared excuse. My boss sent me on a trip out of province, could be 1 or 2 months, maybe 3 or 4. I can't stand it. Just thinking about being away from you for months makes me want to cry. I pretended to sniffle. Jason exhaled in relief, pulling me into his arms. You scared me. I thought someone hurt you. Don't want to go? Then don't go. But this trip is a rare opportunity. When I return, I'll get a bonus enough to almost pay off our debt. I saw him pause and thought. Easy enough. Whenever you miss me, just video call me. Won't that interrupt your work? No, I'll wear headphones. I'll hear you just fine. Perfect. That's exactly how in my past life, I fell for his lies step by step. Just then, Jason leaned down to kiss me. I quickly pulled back, pointing at the food. Eat, the dishes will get cold. Perhaps because I had never refused him before, or because my change was sudden, he hesitated briefly, then the look vanished. After dinner, I told him I needed to pack early and prepare materials for tomorrow's meeting, and he shouldn't wait for me, just go to bed first. He didn't doubt me, simply reminding me to rest after packing. I nodded. I was going to pack, but not for a business trip. I was moving to another place. The next morning, I dragged my luggage to the CAF I had scouted yesterday. After Jason left, I returned to my apartment to install the mini cameras in the living room vent and on the bedroom vanity mirror. I also called the landlord, asking to rent the apartment next door, the one Jason had left for his son. His son was studying abroad and hadn't returned, so the place was vacant. I promised to rent it for only 3 months and to leave it undamaged. Only then did he agree. Once the rent transferred, he gave me the access code. The first thing I did after entering was install the last camera in the peephole. If I wasn't mistaken, Jason would soon bring Hannah Moore home. I wasn't idle either. While waiting, I drafted reports against Miller Group. Report them for tax evasion / Jason Miller's millions. Report them for failing fire safety regulations / Jason Miller's millions. Report them for labor law violations / Jason Miller's millions. Report the sanitation issues at Miller Group's food company / Jason Miller's millions. And sewage discharge violations, another report. In just 1 week, I sent over a dozen reports. Miller Group stayed on trending lists for more than 2 weeks, their stock dropping several points in succession. Of course, this was just the appetizer. He didn't want to split his millions with me. Fine. Then I'd make sure he lost it all. Jason Miller didn't come home for a whole week, likely busy dealing with my reports. Even my video calls over the past few days had nearly exposed him. He was stretched too thin. Looking at the few reports I hadn't yet sent, I decided to pause, letting him catch a breath. If I pushed too hard, he'd have no reason to bring Hannah Moore over, and I wouldn't get the evidence I needed. 2 days later, as I tried to infiltrate Hannah Moore's fan club, Jason Miller returned, this time with Hannah. Even before entering the apartment, they were already locked in a passionate kiss. Through my computer screen, I watched them remove clothing, still on the hallway landing. By the time they reached the bedroom, only their undergarments remained. The rest was not fit for public viewing. I hit record and saved the footage. An hour later, their activity finally subsided. They sat propped against the headboard, Hannah nestling into Jason's arms, her hand tracing circles on his chest. You didn't contact me for so long, I thought you were still upset about what happened back then, she murmured. Jason kissed her lips briefly. The company had a problem. My mother couldn't handle it alone, so I went to help. Just finished, and here I am. Hannah pouted, feigning innocence. So when will you divorce that woman? Also, can we choose a different place next time? This apartment is old, the bed is hard, I always have back pain afterward. Jason looked at her sulking face and smirked, a trace of desire in his eyes. I don't mind a new place, as long as you're not worried about paparazzi. As for the divorce, now isn't the time. Once she's done with her business trip and finishes paying off my last debt, I'll find a reason to divorce her. The nerve, he was still thinking about the debt I had repaid for him. Hannah seemed dissatisfied, but didn't push further. They exchanged a glance and began the next round. I turned off the monitor. Now I understood why they insisted on coming here, afraid of paparazzi. Fine. If their love story is so perfect, I'll be the one giving the paparazzi the biggest scoop. The next day, I staked out the CIF early. As soon as they appeared, I snapped photos relentlessly. Hannah tried to cover herself, almost unrecognizable, but after a few days' observation, I knew the power of fans. Even a mummy could be identified through tiny details. I sorted the photos, picked the clearest ones, printed them, and along with proof of Jason Miller's marriage, sent copies to several top paparazzi influencers. Then I waited for the next day's headlines. As expected, the next day, the hashtag Hannah More Jason Miller shot straight to #1 on trending. Hannah's fans couldn't accept that their idol was a homewrecker. Arguments exploded online, some even insisting she was framed. Fans of her rivals joined in, relishing the chaos. The internet was ablaze. I watched the comments, secretly satisfied. Just then, Jason Miller called. There was a hint of nervousness in his voice. Wife, what are you doing? I scrolled through the next page of comments. Working, what else? It's been so busy lately. Busy? He asked. I knew he was probing whether I had seen the news, so I replied, yes, so busy I barely have time for my phone. I might not be able to call you often. Take care of yourself, okay? Eat on time. I'll worry if you don't, he said. I heard a sigh of relief through the phone. Pretending the boss had arrived, he quickly hung up. On the second to last page of comments, I saw a bombshell. Miu account had posted, Hannah More has never been a good girl. Her history of affairs is more than once. The comment went mostly unnoticed, aside from a few agreeing trolls. I added the user's contact, bluntly asking if it was true. They replied instantly, of course it's true. I have proof. And sent a photo, Hannah More in bed with a heavily pregnant man. The man's face was pixelated, but Hannah's was clearly visible. I immediately knew she was an ally and laid my cards on the table. I'm also one of the victims of Hannah More interfering in someone's marriage, she said. She had plenty more and asked if I wanted them. Of course, I wanted them. Who knew how long that post would stay online? By the time I received and went through the photos, all the posts and discussions about Jason Miller and Hannah More had already been deleted, replaced by a minor story about some small-time actor throwing a tantrum. But with these photos plus the videos I already had, it was more than enough to bring her down from her pedestal. As for Jason Miller, I launched round 2 of my attacks. This time, I didn't just report him, I contacted Miller Group's competitors through my boss. For every report I sent, I'd send the competitors a message. They'd swoop in during Miller Group's investigation, stealing business right under their noses. In half a month, they lost no fewer than 10 deals. Miller Group hemorrhaged tens of millions. Finally, Jason Miller noticed something was wrong. His first suspect was Hannah More, since she had been the person he interacted with most recently. I watched the surveillance footage of them having a huge argument. Hannah More stormed out, slamming the door. Jason sat on the sofa, deep in thought, trying to figure out who had betrayed him. No matter how hard he thought, he would never guess it was me. You wanted me to pay off your $1 million debt, fine. I'd make sure you lost tens of millions of assets. Fair is fair. Unexpectedly, the hygiene violations were real. Tests revealed various levels of melamine and thiacin in the dairy products produced by their subsidiary. Once exposed, public outrage was instantaneous. Tax evasion might be forgiven, but food safety? That's non-negotiable. And the sewage violations? Confirmed. A wave of boycotts swept the internet. Every product related to Miller Group. Their stock plummeted to historic lows. It wasn't divine intervention helping me, it was their own doing. Minor shareholders rushed to sell their shares. Major shareholders united, pressuring Jason Miller and his father to hand over their holdings and leave Miller Group. Jason Miller didn't come home for several days. The one time he appeared, he looked haggard and worn down. Although someone eventually took full responsibility publicly, Miller Group still suffered major damage. And me? It was time for the wife to step in. While Jason Miller was home that day, I ordered takeout for myself and sent him a blurry screenshot from one of his press conferences. Honey, doesn't this person look a lot like you? Same name too, could it be you? Less than half a minute later, his call came in. I ignored it and hung up. He called again. I hung up again. He texted, "Wife, let me explain, it's not what you think." Pick up, I can explain. I didn't reply. I ate while watching him pace the room, flustered and anxious. Only after finishing did I respond. The boss just called. There's a contract that needs revising. I couldn't pick up your call. Honey, what did you want to explain? The person in this photo. Before he could finish, I cut him off. There are plenty of people who look alike and share the same name. Did you really think I'd believe you're the heir to Miller Group? Besides, if you were really Jason Miller of Miller Group, that would make this a marriage scam. A marriage scam? Exactly. You hid your true identity, married me, and had me pay off your debt. If that isn't a scam, what is? A silence followed. Then he said, "How could I ever scam you? You're my most beloved wife." A chill ran down my spine. The audacity of this man. I know you won't scam me. But if you dared, I'd make you penniless and indebted to the tune of $1 million. On surveillance, Jason's face went pale, mortified beyond words. He scrambled to change the subject. Honey, your business trip's been over 2 months. When are you coming back? I miss you. Work's almost done. I'll be back in a few days. Look your ticket and let me know. I'll pick you up. I quickly refused. If he came to get me, the ruse would be blown. No need. The company will send a car. I just need to report to the office first. You stay home and prepare the meal. Jason sounded slightly disappointed. Well, that wastes a chance to perform. I smirked. Don't worry, there will be plenty of opportunities for you to perform in the future. When the 3-month lease ended, I packed and went home. Jason Miller had already prepared a meal for me. Seeing the table set with my favorite dishes, I felt a fleeting sense of dizziness. If only he hadn't lied. But reality was cruel. Even with Miller Group in turmoil, he still managed to perform for me. Halfway through dinner, his phone rang. He went to the balcony to answer. I didn't hear the conversation, but he frowned and said, "Wait for me, I'll be right there." After hanging up, he removed his apron and explained, "There was an incident with a guest at the hotel. I had to handle it." A clumsy excuse. What could a front desk clerk not handle? I nodded, letting him go without exposing him. After he left, I immediately dumped all the food from the table, dismantled the cameras, and sat on the sofa, waiting for Jason Miller to return. That bed. I wasn't going near it again. Just the thought of it made me nauseated. Jason didn't come home that day, nor the next. Just as I was about to call him, a push notification popped up on my phone. Hannah Moore attacked by fans at event, hospitalized with concussion, wealthy boyfriend stays overnight by her side. So last night, Jason Miller hadn't been dealing with Miller Group's business. He'd been staying with Hannah Moore. Hannah's fans hailed them as a perfect couple, a match made in heaven. Hannah Moore didn't issue any denial statement, basically giving tacit approval. And we weren't even divorced yet. Jason Miller was still legally my husband, and Hannah was already this eager. Fine. If that's the case, I'll just give her a little push. Posting online didn't work. Then I'd try another way. I texted Jason, saying I had something to discuss and asked him to come home. He took forever to reply, still handling something. We'll come back tonight. I waited until evening. As soon as I heard the door open, I grabbed some eye drops and squirted them liberally across my face. Jason Miller walked in to see me, tears streaming down my face, and hurried over, setting down his keys. "Honey, what's wrong?" he asked. I looked up at him, my eyes swollen and red. "Jason, do you really love me?" Confused, he didn't hesitate to answer, "Of course I love you. You're the woman I love most in my life." I stared at him, then wiped away tears and asked, "Then why did you lie to me?" Jason froze, about to feign ignorance. "Honey, what are you talking about? How could I ever lie to you?" I pulled up the news on my phone showing his affair with Hannah Moore. "Jason Miller, you liar, you've been deceiving me this whole time, so you really are a wealthy heir, hiding it while I paid off your debts. And on top of that you cheated with Hannah Moore." I listed every one of his sins as I cried. The smile on his lips froze instantly. But moments later, he regained his composure. No panic, no remorse. This was his true self, aloof, selfish, and cold. Switching person is like that. He really should have been an actor. "You really loved me, huh? You recognized me just from my silhouette," he sneered. I tried to coax out a few more tears. "Jason Miller, why? I loved you so much, treated you so well. I scrimped and saved to pay your debts, ate plain buns and drank water, walked home instead of using the shared bike to save money for your debts. And you, how could you treat me like this?" I cried genuinely. These years had been a living hell. "Why? Because you're naive, foolish, easy to deceive. I've been with so many women and only you didn't see through me. Only you believed such a pathetic excuse." My body shook with anger. "So I deserve to be deceived?" He raised an eyebrow, offering no answer. "Divorce. I want a divorce." At the word divorce, he laughed, shamelessly. "Fine, but not a single penny of my wealth will go to you. What right do you have? I paid off so much of your debt. In these years, everything I earned and had over $1 million, at least." "So what?" Jason Miller smirked disapprovingly. "All of that was voluntary. I never forced you." I gritted my teeth. "You're shameless. I'll sue you for marriage fraud." He shrugged, indifferent. "Go ahead unless you can win." "What? The Miller family can still cover everything with their influence. Don't believe it, go ahead and try." "Then I will," I snapped, storming to the TV, grabbing my phone, and rushing out the door. Outside, I checked my live stream, over 1 million viewers already online. The chat was exploding, all condemning Jason Miller and Hannah Moore's shamelessness. I took advantage of my emotional momentum and addressed the camera. "Everyone, what should I do? Does anyone know a lawyer who can help me?" After posting, I ended the stream. At the CIF in the same corner, I ordered an Americano, then sent the incriminating photos and videos of Jason and Hannah to several top gossip journalists, waiting for Jason's call. Almost immediately, my phone rang. It was my long uncontacted parents. I had intended to apologize to them personally after everything was over, but they had seen the live stream and called first. The moment the call connected, my voice choked. "Dad, Mom, I'm so sorry. I was wrong." On the other end, my mother was sobbing uncontrollably. My dad took over. "Silly child, why suffer so much and never call us?" I didn't have the face to call. "I misjudged people, upset you, cut ties. We're only angry. We could never truly disown you. Come home, we've missed you." "Mom, Dad, I miss you too. Once I divorce that bastard, I'll come home." While I was pouring my heart out to my parents, Jason Miller's call came through. Before I could say a word, his furious voice blurted out, "Grace Miller. How dare you use me?" I just smiled. "Everything you said was your own doing. What does that have to do with me?" You've all woman, just wait, I'll make you pay. Careful what you say, I shot back, I'm recording this. Jason Miller scoffed in exasperation, then repeated 3 emphatic fines in a row. Fine, 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 you want a divorce? Don't regret it. Regret. The only regret I have is not realizing your true face sooner, regretting that I married you. You better think carefully. I am Jason Miller of the Miller Group. If you weren't Jason Miller of the Miller Group, if you were just the poor guy persona you created, maybe I wouldn't divorce you. But now, this marriage is over. With that I hung up, unwilling to waste any more energy arguing with him. I sent him the pre-drafted divorce agreement, along with a message: I don't want your millions, I just want what's rightfully mine. At home, I packed up all of his things, dropped them off at the security desk, took photos and sent them to him, and notified him to come and sign the papers at 9 the next morning. Sure enough, I was at the Civil Affairs office at 9 sharp. But half an hour passed with no sign of Jason Miller. I was about to call when he finally showed up, fashionably late. I didn't want to create unnecessary drama. I handed him the already signed divorce agreement, and had him sign it as well. The 30-day cooling-off period began, after which we could officially collect the divorce certificate. I posted the news online with a caption: "It's done. Thank you, everyone, for your support and help." Within hours, my phone exploded with notifications. Messages from colleagues, classmates, and relatives poured in, all asking how I was doing. Even my landlord, Ella Davis, messaged me. "Grace, is the reason you're moving out related to this? If so, I'll redo the apartment for you, new furniture and appliances. You don't have to move, it's rare to have such a good tenant like you. A good tenant is hard to find, and a good landlord even harder. I had grown used to living here anyway." I replied with a simple thank you. During the holiday break, I stayed home for a while. My parents had aged noticeably over the past few years. Before, my goal had been to pay off Jason Miller's debts, buy a house, have kids, and live a happy life. Now, my goal was still to buy a house, but this time, I'd bring my parents there and live happily with them. When I returned to the city after the break, the apartment had been completely renovated in a minimalist style. All the furniture was new, the layout refreshed, and Ella Davis had clearly gone all out. I focused entirely on my work. That morning, as soon as I arrived at the office, my colleagues rushed over to tell me some gossip. Apparently, Hannah Moore had been exposed by paparazzi for having improper relationships with multiple directors and executives, which explained how she got so many top-tier opportunities. Known scandals, not the first-time photos as proof. Rumor had it that Jason Miller had already broken up with her. The one who exposed her was none other than her own assistant. Clona Moore had reportedly treated her assistant terribly, scolding, hitting, and insulting her at will. The assistant finally snapped and revealed everything. The photos circulating online matched exactly what I had received before. I hadn't paid attention to them for a long time. Originally, I had planned to keep those photos as my final trump card, but the scandal had already destroyed Hannah Moore's career, so the photos were now useless. I treated the news with mild amusement, as if I were just an onlooker. After work, I left the office and saw Jason Miller waiting outside. The moment he saw me, he hurried over, smiling warmly. "Grace, let me take you home." I kept a cold face and ignored him. No unsolicited kindness from me, it's either a trick or a scam. Did he really think, after breaking up with Hannah Moore, that he could come crawling back to me? Did he honestly think I'd fall for the same trap twice? As I turned to leave, he reached out to stop me. "Grace, it was all my fault before, will you forgive me?" I looked at him icily. "Jason Miller, we're divorced. We have nothing to do with each other anymore." He tried to act loving again. "It was my fault before. I'm sorry. After everything, I realize you're the one I truly love. Let's withdraw the divorce application." I could only laugh. Who gave him the confidence to think that a simple apology and a few sweet words would make me come back to him? "You can live in my big villa, I'll add your name to the property deeds, and I'll give you an allowance every month. You won't have to work anymore. I glared at him. Even now he still didn't realize what he had done wrong. Seeing my silence, he assumed I was wavering and pressed on. Grace Miller, think carefully. This is your only chance in life to become wealthy. Otherwise, you'll rent your whole life. He knew my greatest wish was to own my own home. I snapped. Jason Miller, you're disgusting. From the moment I realized you had deceived me, I gave up on you. No matter how many houses you buy me, I will never be with you again. I had thought that after scolding Jason Miller, he wouldn't show up again. But he did. Every day he waited for me downstairs after work, and he even ordered lunch for me at noon. Even when my colleagues shot him looks full of disdain, he didn't care. He even started waiting outside my apartment. I complained to the security guards several times, but it didn't help. He kept finding ways to get in. When my landlord, Ella Davis, found out, she moved next door. From then on, every time he showed up she either called the police or alerted the security guards. It was only then that I realized the truth. Jason Miller wasn't chasing after me because he suddenly remembered my worth. He urgently needed me to play a part in a charade to salvage his public image and regain favor with the company's shareholders. Because of the food safety and pollution scandals, Jason Miller's mother had already been forced to resign from the Millen Group. Her condition for leaving was that Jason could keep his position as general manager of the company. But then, with the scandals of his infidelity and marriage fraud coming to light, the company's stock kept plummeting. The shareholders' ultimatum was clear: if he could restore his image in the public eye and retain his GM position, he could stay; if not, he would have to leave the Miller Group, just like his mother. That was why he dumped Hannah Moore and came back to me. I told Hannah Moore the situation. She had been fretting over how to attract public attention. After hearing this, she posted a video online, crying and claiming she was also a victim cheated on by Jason Miller, and later slandered with rumors of improper relations with multiple directors. Jason Miller, of course, registered an account to defend himself. Online, chaos erupted once more. It was truly a case of dogs biting dogs, people hurting people. Everyone ended up injured. And the public, as always, saw everything clearly. In the end, Jason Miller was removed from the Miller Group and sued by the company to compensate for the losses caused by the scandal. His millions dwindled drastically. Hannah Moore was completely erased from the entertainment industry. The 30-day divorce schooling off period ended, and I called to schedule the collection of our divorce certificate. This time he wasn't late. The divorce went smoothly, and I received the millions I was owed. Holding that divorce certificate, I felt an immense weight lift off my shoulders. Having a failed marriage isn't terrifying. The important thing is to cut your losses in time. When Ella Davis learned I had the certificate, she insisted on celebrating. Coincidentally, her son, who had been studying abroad, had just returned to the country. I invited my parents to join in the festivities. At the dinner table, Ella Davis made introductions. Grace, this is my son, Owen Parker. He's a doctor. Owen, this is the young lady I've told you about, Grace Miller. I smiled faintly at him and extended my hand. Hello, I'm Grace Miller. He shook my hand in return. Hello, I'm Owen Parker. In a flash, a sudden memory hit me: the voice from the ambulance in my past life. It's you.